Hello friends, good evening. Welcome to PDF for Exams YouTube channel. Today is day 16 and we are starting a new subject, geography. So what is this geography? It is defined as study of places and relationship between people and their environment. Now where are these people located? We know we all people live on one planet, that is Earth, because life exists only on Earth. So that's why we study about the places of Earth, people living on Earth and the environment. So these all are studied under geography. But this unit or today's day we will be studying about the origin of Earth or universe, which Earth is part of. Earth is part of a universe. So how does this universe originated? We'll study about that. Let's see what is the agenda and we'll discover what all we are going to study in today's video. So in today's video we'll see the origin and evolution of Earth. Why Earth? Because Earth is part of universe, and since we'll study about the origin of universe, we ultimately know how our planet Earth was originated or evolved. Next we'll study about the latitudes, which are also known as parallels. Next is longitude, and finally we'll study about the interior of Earth, that means in how many parts Earth is divided in all. So the very first topic is origin of universe. There are certain theories given by several philosophers, and out of which two are very important, and we are going to study both theories or hypotheses in this video. So the first hypothesis that we are going to study is nebular hypothesis. So this hypothesis was initially given by Immanuel Kant in 1755. In 1755, Immanuel Kant gave this hypothesis of nebular, and later mathematician Laplace revised in 1796. That means in 1796 it was improved to a better version. So let's see what does this hypothesis say, how the origin or how our universe originated. So according to this nebular hypothesis, initially there were clouds of gases. Several gases were there. Few light gases were there, few dense gases were there. What were those gases? Those were helium, hydrogen. These were the light gas which were available in that clouds, and the heavier gases were oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. These were the heavier gases which were present in that cloud. Now due to force of gravity, I hope you know what is gravity. It is a physical concept which is given in physics. So we know that there is a gravity. Gravity is simple kind of force which pulls the body towards itself. If we have to understand gravity, you can take example of Earth's surface. We are standing over here, or anything falls, it doesn't move upward, it generally falls downward because of the force of gravity. So every body possesses some or the other gravity. We as human being, we too have our own gravity. Earth have its gravity. Every object has its own gravity, but it's related. If the other body has more, the mass or the size of the body is more, then that body will have more gravity than you, and you can't feel that you too have some gravity. Okay, so at that time there was a cloud of few gases were light and few gases were heavy or dense, you can say. So due to gravity, those molecules or atoms started shrinking or collecting, and there was an angular momentum. When two bodies are attracted, not two bodies, there were several bodies, several elements were there, several gases were there, and it formed a complete cloud. For example, this is attracting this atom, this is attracting this atom, and similarly there were all atoms attracting each other, because of which an angular momentum started. Angular momentum means the cloud started rotating like a disc, and a disc of clouds were formed. Understand what is a disc? If you take a plate in which you eat, so that can be also called a disc. So at that time these clouds started rotating in angular motion. What is angular motion? I hope you know this also. Your bicycle, the tire of your bicycle, it rotates in angular momentum or angular. So that cloud started rotating in angular momentum, and due to this momentum, centrifugal, there are two forces. I'm not going much into physics, but still you need to know this basic concept to understand actually what happened during that time. So there are two kind of forces, one is centripetal and one is centrifugal. So if you hold a string and tie a stone at the other end, and when you start rotating this string, it will move in circular motion. It will always move in circular motion, and it will not leave its path. So this motion, due to this motion, centripetal force arises, and it tends to come at the center, but due to angular momentum it's not able, or it doesn't come at center. Whereas the centrifugal force is something when it leaves its track and moves out. when this stone, while rotating due to some external force, leaves this track and goes out, that is called centrifugal force. So over here what happens, as there were several gases, they started rotating angular momentum, they got angular momentum, and starting a disk was formed. And during this rotation, the heavier metals, what were the heavier elements or atoms we can say, those were carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and there were many more, but these were the majority gases which were present at that time. They started coming at center. Whereas the lighter atom, what were the lighter atom, that were hydrogen and helium, they started moving outward, that means they formed the outer layer. So during this momentum, there was energy started releasing over there at the center, all the heavy elements were there. So because of that, energy started releasing there due to fusion reaction. There was a fusion reaction. You know what is fusion and fission. In nuclear energy, if you have studied about nuclear energy, there two concepts are being taught. One is fusion and the other is fission. Fusion by word also it is very clear. Fusion means combining, whereas fission means splitting. So in this case what happened, fusion reaction took place and at the center energy started generating, and that energy, that center part of energy formed the sun. We know we in our planet or in our solar system we have a sun surrounded by all the other planets. So that center body formed the sun, which consisted of heavy element, whereas the lighter element formed small number of another nebula clouds. That means these hydrogen and helium, they formed another small little clouds, and they again got momentum, and while forming momentum the metals got center and they started forming their own planets. So this hypothesis tells how our solar system was formed. First the sun was formed, later after solidifying few, we know that few of our planets are solid, few of our planets are gaseous. We'll see this later when we study solar system. So in this way our complete solar system was formed. This is what this nebular hypothesis tells us about. So next hypothesis that we are going to study is Big Bang theory. It is most accepted theory which tells the formation of universe. So according to this concept, there was a initial period, so everything has a starting. So according to Big Bang theory also, there is a start point, initial point, and if we draw a line over here and timeline, for example, this is 1 year, this is 2 year, this is 3 year, and this is -1 year, -2 year, -3 year. We use this scale generally anywhere. So we don't have any information about the back, what happened at back, we don't know. There is no founding, no research on that. But after this initial period, our universe started forming, or universe started expanding. So we don't know about this period, we only know about this period, and after that what happened, these things are given hypothetically, these things are assumed, and even some proven also being given, but we only know about this part. So what happened, there is a point, there was a point means, you understand, there was a point which had infinite temperature. The temperature was very high, density was very high. This was called as singularity. So if you have heard or read or seen somewhere on TV or YouTube about black hole, so this was a kind of black hole. We know in black hole everything, whatever passes by a black hole, it just absorbs it. It doesn't leave light also, even light get absorbed in black hole. Recently first image of black hole has also been released by NASA, so it was quite in news, so you might have heard about this black hole. So it was also a kind of black hole, or it was termed as singularity. This name is given, singularity over here, this was termed as singularity. So due to some explosion, this singularity started expanding. Earlier what it was few millimeter in size, and after that explosion this universe started expanding. And when this happened, when this explosion happened, it was around 13.7 billion years ago. It happened very fast back. So 13.7 billion years ago, this singularity started expanding, and during the process of this expanding, all our solar system, that means sun, planets, satellites, everything was formed during this expansion. But this expansion is basically categorized into two era, you know, in history, if you have studied history, you know what does we mean by era. Era is dividing the time. So specifically we don't have to go in time, but initially or majority it is divided into two era. One is the radiation era and the other is matter era. So by radiation we know energy, and matter means We know matter is anything which occupies space and has mass. It's very simple definition of a matter, and we can even touch and feel and see about the matter. Whereas radiation or energy, it's not necessary that we will be able to see every energy. Although we can say see few energy, like light is also a kind of energy. We can see when it strikes back. We can't see light actually. We see the object, its reflection, but we can assume that light is here. That's why we are able to see the other object. In case of matter, we can see, touch and feel. So after Big Bang happened, after that singularity exploded, there are two major era which are told. So for example, here it was singularity and it exploded and started expanding. And in this, if we divide the timeline, it is divided into two parts. One is radiation, other is matter era. So in this era, nothing was formed, no bodies were formed, only all the activities were happening in form of energy. That means all energies or kind of radiations were there. Whereas in the matter era, these radiations started forming the bodies, solar bodies like sun, moon, earth, all the solar system planets we have, everything we have in solar system started forming in this matter era. So this is all about Big Bang theory, which is a hypothesis. It's most accepted hypothesis for formation or evolution of universe. So I hope you have understood this Big Bang theory. Now moving to solar system. What is the solar system, friends? So this is very interesting. You might have heard about it. I studied in school also. It's not very difficult. It's very easy to know. We know very well what is our solar system, and to understand the solar system, we need to understand universe actually. So what happens? We have universe. We have seen two hypothesis theory. One is a nebular cloud theory and the other is Big Bang theory. So in these theories we have seen that entire universe was formed. So universe is endless. We don't know the end of universe. But in universe, for example, if there is one universe, this universe is divided into several galaxies. Okay, we have many galaxies. So out of these galaxies, one galaxy is Milky Way. Milky Way is our galaxy in which our solar system exists. So this is the solar system which exists in Milky Way galaxy. Okay, and like this, like similar to our system, there might be many other galaxies and other solar system. We don't know. We are not aware of those things, but we know and we have to study about our own solar system. So I hope you understand there is a universe. Universe is subdivided into many galaxies, and out of that we have one galaxy about which we are going to study. That means our solar system is part of Milky Way galaxy. So our solar system consists of one sun, that is a kind of star which is nearest to all planet, and we have 8 planets. Earlier there were 9 planets, but after some time this Pluto was excluded from planets because it was seemed too smaller to be considered as a planet. If you have to understand the sequence of these planets, so we can see Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. So when I was in school, I was taught in a way, there was a rhyming line which I used to memorize these things. My very elegant mother just showed us 9 planets. If you want, you can write this down. My very elegant mother just showed us 9 planets. Although planet is not no more planet, but still if you see the initial, they will tell the name of each planet. By this you can remember the sequence of planets so that you don't forget. So this was just a trick which I have been taught in school time. So these planets are divided into several parts. That means on the parameters, whenever we have to divide a planets or something, we need a parameter on the basis of which we will classify. So this planet has been classified on parameters of composition, size and position relative to sun. So the first 4 planets, they are called terrestrial or rocky planet. So we can see in the image itself, we have seen here sun is the star. Nearest 4 planets, what are the 4 planets? Those are Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars. And the other 4 planets are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. So these planets are called terrestrial or rocky planets. Why? Because the surface of these planets are harder than the surface of these planets. They are gaseous in form. And why are these solid in nature or they are rock surface? We have studied in formation of the universe itself that the heavier part goes in center because they are rotating or revolving in circular or angular momentum. Because of that, the heavier part will come or become near to the gravitational body. Over here, sun has the highest gravitational pull. That's why the body nearer to sun are terrestrial or rocky or hard in nature, whereas the other body which are in outer area are gaseous in nature. So these planets, apart from Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars, these are called Jovian planet or gaseous planet, and they are very huge in size. Okay, so this is on the basis of composition. On the basis of size, they are divided into small planets and giant planets. Again, the numbers would be same, not the numbers, the planets would be same. As in case of terrestrial or rocky, they were the nearest to the sun and they were called as terrestrial or rocky planets. Similarly, they are small in size and they would be called Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, smaller planet, whereas the other planet or Jovian planets, they are also called as giant planet. Now, by the position related to sun, again inner and outer planets, this is the category. The planets which are near to sun, they would be called as inner planet, while the planets which are away from the sun would be called as outer planet. I hope you understand this. Now moving to next, if you want to see the image, let us see the image again to understand well. So you can see here, and one more point that I have to tell you is here, why gases are not present over here. So as we can see, while the other planet have gaseous around the diameter or the entire planet, but these four planets do not have the gaseous because they are near to the sun and the solar radiation of sun takes away or moves away these gases from these planets. That's why they are rocky in nature. Only solid surface is present, whereas the gaseous substance is not present around these planets. So this is all about solar system. And of course, moon is also part of a solar system. Moon is a natural satellite. What is a satellite? Any body which is rotating or revolving, which is revolving in circular path along any other body, that is called satellite. So moon is satellite because it revolves around the earth in circular motion as sun revolves around the sun. Earth revolves around the sun. So this was about the solar system. In solar system, we too have few more bodies like Kuiper belt and Oort cloud. So what are these Kuiper belt? As an image you can see, there is a sun and planets are rotating around it, okay, and the outermost layer after Neptune, the outermost layer is called Kuiper belt. This Kuiper belt consists of ice masses, and these ice masses are combination of few gases like methane, ethane and water. They just form ice, they freeze and form ice, and this body lies in Kuiper belt. And this Kuiper belt is home of many dwarf planets. Dwarf means many small planets like Pluto and all. Next is Oort cloud. So in the image, again it is very clear from the image itself, the layer which is away from Kuiper belt. So we have seen this is sun, these are planet, this is Kuiper belt. We saw that above, that means side of Neptune, this Kuiper belt was there, and beyond this Kuiper belt there is Oort cloud. Oort cloud is home for many meteoroids or asteroids, and these are obviously named after few astronomers. In case of Kuiper also, it was named behind some astronomer, and this Oort belt or cloud is also named behind Jan Oort, who was an astronomer, and he theorized its existence. Next important point is Korolev crater. Now what are crater? You might have seen these images. These are the surface of moon or Mars, any planet. So these spots which you can see are called craters. These spots, these holes on the surface of Earth are called crater. Now this crater has been seen on Mars. There has been a mission Mars, which was, let's see over here, it was Mars Express mission, which was an European space agencies. They found this crater, and that's why it is named as Korolev crater. Now this crater is covered with ice, and if we talk about the distance, so let's get back to the image, then we'll see. So this covers the distance of 60 kilometers. If you see this distance, this is 60 kilometers, and if we see the height is around 2 kilometers, and it is assumed that these ice sheets have some air trapped in between, which doesn't allow it to melt even during 6-month summer season. And there has been many debates going on whether there is life on Mars or not. So after founding this crater, the research has been more encouraged, and they are trying to find life on other planet, in moon, Mars, and whatever possibilities are there, they are trying to find. So this is all about the solar system. Now coming to the Earth. Earth is our own planet where every kind of life exists. Now if we talk about the position of the Earth in our solar system, so we saw there was a sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. So where does Earth come? This comes on the 3rd position, and according to size, it is the 5th largest planet of our solar system. Okay, and this is the only planet, this is a factual type of question, this is the only planet which is not named after Greek or Roman deity, whereas the other planet like Mercury, Venus, Mars, these are all named after Greek or Roman deity or god and or goddess, you can say. And at the poles, our earth is slightly flattened, that's why they are termed as ellipsoid or spherical in shape, and there are certain proofs to show that earth is spherical in shape. Earlier, when technology was not so advanced, many astronomers, many philosophers gave their own theory, but later they found that earth was spherical. And what were the proof or evidences of earth's sphericity, we will see. First is ship's visibility. So if our earth is spherical in nature, okay, let's consider this a planet, I'm just drawing it, I'm using mouse, that's why I'm not able to draw very well. But if this is earth, and if any, and this is water body, these are water body, and any ship is moving from here, this is a ship, and anyone standing at this place and observing the ship, he will first see the tip of this ship, and later the whole body will be seen as it moves forward. So this defined that the surface of earth is spherical in shape. Next is sunrise and sunset. So from which direction does sun rise? I hope you know this. North, south, east, west. So sun rises from east direction. So people whoever are there in east direction, or the places which are there in east direction, in our case in map of India, which states lies in east? In eastern side, all the northeastern states lie, there are 7 sisters, 7 northeastern states, as Bengal and all lies in eastern state. So these places will see the sunrise first as compared to the people staying in Gujarat in the western region. So this also shows that shape of earth is spherical. Next is lunar eclipse. So the shadow which is cast by earth on the moon during lunar eclipse is circular. So this also showed that earth is spherical or circular in shape. Next is driving pole on level ground on earth curve. Now many engineers, when they try to dig holes and put these poles, so if our earth surface is like this and poles of equal heights are being placed, for example, if 10-meter poles are placed over here, 10-meter poles are placed here, 10-meter poles is placed over here, but for leveling the height, so it should be same. If they dig it 2 meter down, 2 meter down and 2 meter down, that means 8 meters should be there. The height of these poles should be 8 meter and they should align, the level should be same, but this doesn't happen. They have to adjust them little, this they have to put little upper, or this pole they have to dig more, then only it comes to level. This also shows that earth is spherical in shape. And the last and final evidence is aerial photographs. Now since we have advanced technologies, many satellites are revolving around earth, we have got many pictures from space and it clearly shows that earth is spherical in shape. So this is about our earth's surface. There is much more to study about earth. This was just an introduction. Okay, in later videos, in later classes, we'll study more about earth. Next is latitude and longitude. See, this is also a very important concept. What are these latitudes and longitudes? So as we know, our earth is spherical in shape. These are the imaginary lines. So whenever you see a earth, so very oftenly in your atlas or in a geography book, you might have seen earth is designed like this, earth is made like this, and there are various lines drawn over it. So does these lines really exist? They don't exist at all. These are just an imaginary line which we draw for our own convenience. So there is significance of each line draws. So whatever these latitudes are the horizontal line which are drawn on the earth's surface, whereas longitude are the vertical line. So this is the simplest definition of latitude and longitude. Okay, so now this longitude and latitude, they have their own significance. Majorly this combination of latitude and longitude is used for determining the location. So you might have seen the coordinates in some movies, coordinates are shown wherever. If you see in your Google Maps also, you can find the coordinates. So these coordinates are the combination of these latitude and longitude, which can easily help us to locate any position on the earth's surface. So this is the main purpose of this latitude and longitude. Let's see them individually, what is latitude and longitude, and after that we'll understand the significance and use of this. So starting with latitudes, so I'll take them parallelly. I'll not explain them individually, these latitude and longitude. I'll take them parallelly. So there are two lines which divide our earth's surface into two halves. What are those two lines? So in latitude we have equator which is drawn horizontally. This is the equator. It goes all around the surface. It's not that it is drawn only on one side. It entirely cuts the earth into two halves. If you take a ball and cut from center, it is similar to that. So that line would be equator. So over here some assumption is done. There is a north pole and south pole around which our earth rotates. So these assumptions are done. So 90 degrees, so we have to consider this angle which is formed over here should be 90 degree. So line cutting through this will be called an equator, and this will equally cut the earth into two halves. You can just imagine or visualize cutting a ball. If you take a plastic ball and cut into half, and you will see two parts are divided, and that part which cuts the earth into two equal parts is called as equator. And the other line, this cuts the earth surface or earth into two halves horizontally, whereas other line, that is prime meridian, it is in longitude, which cuts the earth into two parts vertically. Okay, and what are the significance? So this equator divides earth into two hemispheres. What are those hemispheres? Very simple. If we see the directions, north, south, east, west, so the two hemisphere, the first would be northern hemisphere and this would be southern hemisphere. Similar is the case with prime meridian. It will also divide into two parts. This would be eastern hemisphere and this would be western hemisphere. Okay, now how these degrees are given over here. So you might get confused. If you know, very well. If you don't know, I'll explain how this lines are captioned. That means how names are given or how these measurements are given to these lines. So if this is equator, it is cutting the earth into two parts, that is considered to be 0 degree. And if we move northwards, if we move in north zone, the degree would be in positive, whereas if we go downwards, the degree would be negative. Those all will be equal. We'll see how they are divided. So actually the latitude, the horizontal line, the imaginary horizontal lines which are drawn all over the earth's surface, they are considered to be the angular distance from the center of the earth. Center means center, the core. If you have cut your ball into two half, and if you see the flat surface, so this is the flat surface, this surface, if you can visualize, this is the flat surface, and there would be a center to it. So from that center you draw one line and start measuring the angle. So if in upward direction, if we start measuring all, if you have this part of the ball, if you see this distance, this is the flat surface and this is the depth surface. So these line, if you go make every angle similar, that means if we take 30 degree and start making 30 degree everywhere we make 30 degree. So a line is drawn, an imaginary line would be drawn. So that would be considered as longitude. Similarly, at different angles, different longitude will be formed. Latitudes, sorry, I'm saying longitude. Different latitudes will be formed. So there are few important latitudes that are to be considered and understood and not understood. They just need to be known that they exist. So the important latitudes are Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn in southern hemisphere, whereas, and these are at same angle. So we see 20 degree, 23 degree 26 minutes, 23 degree 26 minutes in minus. So these, whatever the important latitudes that we are going to see, those will be equal. The difference would be that this is positive and this would be in negative, because this goes beyond the equator, 0 degree. The other important is Arctic Circle, which is at 66 degree and 34 minutes, and whereas the Antarctic Circle, which is 66 degree 34 minutes. Southern hemisphere, this S stands for southern hemisphere. And finally the South Pole at 90 degree and North Pole 90 degree. So these are just points, not latitude. So these are few important latitudes that you should know. Now what are significance of these latitudes? What are importance? Why these 4 latitudes are considered important? Why we are learning these? So there are several heat zones of Earth. What are these heat zones? So these heat zones, that means there are specific zones divided all over the Earth's surface which receives equal amount of energy or heat energy. For example, there are 2 to 3 or 5 zones. If they are divided into 5 parts, so all the 5 parts would receive different kind of heat energy. So by watching this image itself, it would be very clear what I mean to tell. So let's see this image. So in this image you can see our Earth is slanting little. You know very well that Earth on its imaginary line, North Pole and South Pole, it is tilted a little bit. That's why this is always shown in a little tilted. Even if you have seen globes, you might have seen they are not straight, they are a little bit tilted. Now, and these are latitude we have seen equator 0 degree, then Antarctic circle, Arctic circle, Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer. We have seen these important latitudes above. So what happens, since this is tilted and you can see the area of Earth, it is bulging outwards. That means over here it is nearest to the sun. If you see this image and try to imagine which ray will reach first, if any race is done, for example, if 5 people are standing here, how many, 3 to 5, yeah, 5 people are standing here, and every people has got different position, whereas the ending would be also different from each one. The person who was standing on the top will reach first, not reach first, they will obviously reach first because they have to travel less distance, whereas these people will reach late as they have to travel more distance. So there is specific zone which receive most amount of heat energy from sun, that is called tropical zone or torrid zone. So this zone line between Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer. So this is called as tropical zone and receive most amount of heat from sun. The other zone is Tropical of Cancer and Arctic Circle. This zone and Tropic of Capricorn and Antarctic Circle. So this zone receive moderate amount of heat energy and they are termed as temperate zone. Temperate zone. And finally the poles, very least light reaches over there. That's why they are considered as poles. And at poles, you know that very least amount of sun rays comes and we have 6 months of winter, 6 months of summer, something like that. So this happens as pole because least amount of sun rays reaches there. When it reaches there, it is continuously there, and these day and night system are different at poles than at the other places on the Earth's surface. So this is significance of latitude. What is the significance of longitude? So we have seen how latitudes measure what is the significance. So with the help of longitude, we measure the time. So we know this very well. If you are in India and some of your friend is living in London, America, any other country, we have several time zone. If you are calling that person at night, and we know our technology, mobiles, email, internet, WhatsApp calling, whatever they are, everything happens in real time. It's not like past times whenever you had to send letters and all. If you send today, it would reach after 2 or 3 days or after a week. So you didn't knew exactly that there is a time difference, but now you yourself can experience there is time difference between one place to other. If you are in India and call to your friend in London, you will see that at there it would be day, whereas at your place it would be night. So why this time zone? Why there is difference in time zone? So we'll understand this by understanding few little mathematics. So what happens? Where is the mathematics? Let me yes, here it is. So there is single line. If you understand this calculation, you will understand why there is time zone difference, why there is time zone difference throughout the Earth surface. So we know our Earth surface makes one revolution in 24 hours. Not revolution, one rotation actually. It rotates on its axis in 24 hours. It makes one rotation. So completing one rotation means it will move to a 360 degree. We know if we start at a point and come back to the point, we have gone through say 360 degree. So here it covers 360 degree in 24 hours. So in 1 hour it will cover 15 degree. Okay. So we don't need to go much deeper than this. We'll just take example of this only. If anyone or if any longitude is drawn 15 degree away, that place will experience 1 hour later. That means 1 hour more addition will be there, and whereas if you go back in time, it will be less, 1 hour lesser. So we'll understand by taking example of the map. You will understand better. So there is an international date line which is called prime meridian. From this, or this is a reference from which the time zones are calculated, or times are calculated throughout the world. Why this was required? Because if we don't have any date line, so here it is, international date line is over here. This is prime meridian, is the line which divides, or it is actually the other half. If this is a flat map, when you move it or when you form a circle, it will both match. So what happens? So you can see if we take the reference over here 0 degree, if you move by 15 degree, if for example you are somewhere, I'll take example of Delhi because we are in India. So see here, if we are in Delhi and if you move by 15 degree, by moving 50 degree, where do you reach? Here it is Indonesia. So if here it is 5 p.m. for example, if it is 5 p.m. over here, at same time you called some person at in Jakarta, which is Indonesia, and they will tell that here it is 6 o'clock. That means there is difference of 1 hour between these two places at same time. It's very interesting. So it is done with the help of this international date line, which is assumed as reference. And while moving eastward, if you move eastward, you will get addition, or you will lead by 1 hour or 2 hour depending upon the degree you move on. If you move by 30 degree, 2 hours extension would be there. If you move by 45 degree, there would be 3 hour delay, 3 hour extra. Whereas if you move westward, time would be reduced. That means if here it is 12, here it would be 11 p.m. more back it would be 10 a.m. So I hope you understand this time zone and how these are calculated. If you have issues, you can ask me in comment box. I'll explain this again. I'll make a separate video on this because this is a very interesting and very important topic. Next is circle of illumination. Now by this image you can understand this very clearly, very easily. Any line, a line which is dividing the earth into two parts. What do you understand by illumination? Illumination means light. So the line which divides the earth into two parts, one is illuminated part and the other is dark part. So this line would be called as circle of illumination because the lighted part will be divided or separated from the dark part. Now today's last topic, that is interior of earth. Interior of earth we have to study. We have our earth surface, earth, and it is very huge in size. If you keep digging, you will get something or the difference. But till now we are not able to reach very deep because of certain issues. We can't dig very deep, but still we know much about our earth surface. So for knowing that, there should be several sources or several experiments might have been done to know what lies inside the earth's surface. As you have seen, during the formation of universe, our earth's solar system was formed, and in our solar system heavier metals were drawn in the core or at the center. So the sun was formed. Similarly, several planets were formed, and in that planet itself, whichever the heavier metals, they came at the core or at the center. So for knowing the interior of earth, there are several sources. They may be direct or indirect sources by the help of which we have been able to know the layers of earth's surface. So the very first direct source is rock. So whatever rocks are present on the earth's surface are the rocks which comes from volcanic eruption. So we study those rocks and we can imagine what kind of material would be present when we go deep inside earth. So whenever this volcanic eruption is there, magma comes out. So by studying that magma, we can imagine that somewhere inside the earth magma is there. That means molten rock materials are present. Next is indirect sources. What are these indirect sources? So there are certain meteoroids, these are the solar bodies which sometimes falls on the earth. So scientists or astronomers, they study these meteors and find how our earth would be, because sometimes in the past our earth would be also a kind of these solar bodies. Next is gravitational force. So gravitational force is also important. That means there is some kind of force which is attracting us, which is not allowing us to fly in the air. We are standing on the earth, you are standing on earth, everything is on the earth just because of earth's gravitational pull, or else you would be flying in the air. You might have seen in some science fiction movies, especially related to space agencies and all. Whenever they go in spaceship, there is no gravity. Because of that, they start floating in the air. And the other important activity with the help of which we know about the interior of earth is seismic activity. So this seismic activity is part of earthquake. We'll study this in detail whenever we'll study earthquake. Here also I'll just give a brief what this seismic activity is. So in UPSC there is generally a question, there can be a question, which is a seismic wave. So you might get confused with tsunami, because in seismic wave we have primary wave, secondary wave and surface wave, and this tsunami is also a kind of seismic wave, but their origination is not seismic. Okay, so don't get confused with this. If you have 4 options, never take this tsunami waves. So let's understand about these activities only. Seismic activities or seismic waves, will come to this later. So as I've said, there are 3 kind of waves: primary waves, secondary waves and surface wave. So this primary and secondary waves together, they are called as body waves, whereas the surface wave is nothing. It's only one name, it has one name, surface wave. So why this is called body waves? Because primary and secondary waves moves along the body of the earth. It comes from somewhere inside the earth and moves along the complete body, whereas the surface waves moves or travels on the surface of the earth. That's why it is named as surface waves. So let's understand them one by one. What are these primary waves? What are these secondary waves? So starting with primary waves. So if you have to understand in little easier way, we can understand by analogy or by considering some example without going into technical details of this. You just have to understand how they function or how they move, and there are a few characteristics which you need to know. So we take example of a queue. You understand what is queue? Queue is a line. For example, if to purchase movie tickets, you stand in a queue. If you have to fill your forms, or if you have to send some letters, your government letter forms, if you go in post office, you have to stand in queue. Now these days there is almost everywhere queue because of this corona pandemic. Everyone is standing in line waiting for their chance to come. Although now we are maintaining social distancing and we are standing 1 meter apart, but when there was no corona, in normal time, how you used to stand? Without leaving any gap with between two peoples. So if we consider a queue over here, let's take an example. I'll draw peoples. These are people. I'm using mouse so you understand how I draw. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So 8 people are standing in a queue. Okay, 8 people are standing in a line, and this is the window whatever these people are standing for. So due to long waiting, sometime what happened, people from back start pushing the people in front. That's generally happen, you might have experienced. Okay, so over here the last person, let's assume this last person pushes this person. What will happen? This person will push this one, and so on. The force will move till the first person might little by tilt, or he might fall down. Even in some cases the person might fall down also. So again, and if this person pushes back, what will happen? The force will move this way, and the person standing at last might fall down. So this is primary wave. So primary waves moves like this only. It just moves in single direction whenever initiated. And we talk about the property of this primary waves. These can move in air, liquid and solid. So this can move in every kind of material, not every kind, air, liquid or solid. So liquid could be viscous also, solid we know, and air we know. And talking about the secondary wave, what are these secondary waves? And just remember, this is also a body wave, part of body wave, so it always moves through the body. For example, if this is the earth and any energy is initiated or generated over here, so it will move inside the earth surface only, and it will reach the earth top. Next is secondary wave. So now let's take another example. If in the same queue, we'll take example of the same queue. What happens? This person pushes from back side and this person pushes from front side. What will happen? The person standing somewhere in the middle or somewhere near middle will bulge outwards. He will move outwards because he won't be able to stand, because he's experiencing force from both the sides. So you can see, if this keeps happening or this line is very large or huge, so this might move into waveform like this. This force might start moving in this direction. So this is called as secondary wave. And finally we have surface wave. So surface wave is very understood. It's very destructive in nature. There is no example for surface wave, but you know the characteristic of surface wave. The surface wave always travel in on the surface of the earth, and the frequency is very low. Now how do we determine this frequency? So we determine this frequency by counting the number of waves in certain period of time. So if we consider this example, see, I am drawing few waves. Just a minute. Okay, so I'm done. So I am calculating, this is one, let's take example of 1 minute, this is also 1 minute, and this is also 1 minute. So if you count the number of waves, you will see if any energy or any body or any waves have high frequency, they will generate more number of waves in 1 minute as compared to the other waves. So this is primary wave, this is secondary wave, and this is surface wave. So by this image you can understand the primary wave have high frequency. Why high frequency? Because it is generating more number of waves in same time. In 1 minute it is generating, for example, 5 waves. In 1 minute it might generate 4 waves, and in 1 minute this might generate 3 waves. So the number of waves keep reducing, and that's why the frequency high to low. This is highest frequency is primary wave, secondary wave has low frequency, and the surface wave has the lowest frequency. And one more important characteristic of the secondary wave I forgot to tell is that it only moves in solid, it doesn't move in liquid. Now I've told you about the properties and how these forces or these waves move, but what do we understand by this? How we can assume or know about the interior of the earth? So what happens whenever any energy is initiated? For example, if any earthquake comes, so if this is the earth's surface and if any energy is initiated somewhere over here, So these step all kind of waves, the secondary wave, primary wave, surface wave start moving. So from here primary wave start moving, then secondary wave start moving, and then finally the surface wave moves along the surface. So with the help of measurement of these waves, we can understand this. We know property of primary wave. They move through solid, liquid, air, everywhere they can move. So penetration of these waves, and whereas we can see the secondary waves do not move in liquids, so we can see it doesn't goes beyond. If our origin of the energy was above the place from where magma is located, this secondary wave won't go beyond the magma or above the magma if the energy is originated below magma. I hope you're getting this. Let me draw a simple diagram. I don't think so you'll be able to understand. So if this is earth, crust, mantle, this is crust, mantle, sorry, core, mantle and crust. Uppermost layer is called crust, this is mantle and this is core. We'll study this surface later, but here for example what we have to understand. So if this any energy is initiated at this point, let's take example. So how many types of waves are there? 3 types of wave. So if waves start moving, the secondary wave start moving, primary wave start moving and surface wave start moving. So by measurement of these wave or where do they penetrate, we are able to know that this layer is magma, this layer is solid, or this layer is gaseous. If gases are not, few gases are also there below the earth's surface. So we just know about the interior of earth using by observing the movement of these waves. So I hope it is clear. Next is earth's interior. So earth is divided broadly into 3 parts: crust, the uppermost part, next is mantle, and the innermost part is called crust, core. Why I'm saying crust today. So if we take the look at the diagram, so you can see the uppermost layer is called crust, second is upper mantle and mantle. These are divided into 2 parts, and similarly core, inner core and outer core. So these are the major classification of earth's surface, and there are many discontinuity. What are this discontinuity? So whenever you dig, for example, if you start digging from the top of the earth's surface, it's not that you dig 30 or 40 kilometers, you'll just get mantle. So it's not like that. So there might be some connection between these 2 layers, crust and upper mantle. So those connections are called as discontinuity. So the discontinuity between crust and upper mantle is called Mohaveric discontinuity. So on, you can see the Rapeti, Gutenberg. You just see the image, you will be able to understand and name the different type of discontinuity which are present between several layers. Talking about the crust, the maximum distance of continents. So now our earth's surface, it is not even. This is very commonly understood. Somewhere it is mountain, somewhere it is ocean, so it is not even at all. So whenever there is a sea, if you dig from in that sea, you can go just 5 kilometers maximum and you will find the next layer. Whereas if you start digging on the surface of the earth, if you dig 30 kilometers, you will get the next layer. It would not be common at mountains also. If you go to Mount Everest and start digging from Mount Everest, you have to cover this extra distance also. So it would be more in that case. Similarly, if several layers has several distances, so the mantle, its distance is around 2900 kilometers. That means if you dig 2900 kilometers, you will find mantle. If you dig this 30 kilometers, you will find the next layer, whereas this next layer continues till 2900 kilometers, so deep. And after that, the core, in all this core is around 3500 kilometers. So this is all about interior of earth and nothing more is left, I hope. So this ends our today's video. I hope you've understood the concepts, and if there is any doubt, you can always ask in the comment box. Thank you for watching. See you next video. Till then, goodbye.